When the millionaire's daughters pleaded for help, he was shocked at their dark secret. The rain pounded down in sheets, blurring the lights of the opulent mansion. Each droplet seemed to carry a whisper of a hidden truth, echoing through the night. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The millionaire, Richard Blackwood, was used to getting what he wanted, but now, standing in front of him were his two daughters, Emily and Sarah, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. It was the kind of fear that could chill your bones. Dark secrets loomed in the shadows, and he could feel the weight of them pressing down on his chest. Tighter and tighter, Dad, we need your help. Emily's voice trembled. It was an echo against the grand marble walls, stark and jarring. She glanced at Sarah, who nodded, her hands shaking. In that moment, the normally calm billionaire sensed something was deeply wrong. The air crackled as if it had the power to reveal the unspeakable. Their trembling hands clutched a crumpled piece of paper, and he could see the corners of their lips quivering, words caught like butterflies in their throats. The sisters revealed that their seemingly perfect lives hid dark undercurrents. "There's something in our room, something we found." Sarah's voice quaked, her eyes darting to the hallway like a frightened deer. Richard felt a pang of panic. A father's instinct kicked in. What had they discovered? As they spoke, he could almost hear muffled whispers floating down the hallway, shadows stretching where shadows should not be. It was like the house itself was alive, holding its breath, waiting. The laughter of lavish parties that once echoed through these walls felt like a distant dream. Now, something sinister hovered, making the ornate furnishings loom ominously in the dim light, their grandeur a shroud for the secrets they concealed. The deeper they dug into their tale, the closer Richard's heart raced. They talked of a hidden room sealed behind a wall. "There are noises at night." Emily bit her lip, her gaze falling to the floor as if she feared what might crawl out of the darkness. "And when you open the door, you'll see." His heart pounded harder as chills raced down his spine. He needed to know. What could they have stumbled upon? "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." Richard's breath hitched. The tension was palpable. "What's inside?" he demanded, his voice steadying the storm of emotions whirling in the air. Just as the words left his lips, a thunderous noise echoed from the hallway, silencing their fears for just a moment. The looming darkness promised secrets unspoken, and a knot formed in Richard's chest. What were his daughters hiding? What had they unearthed that could shatter their lives forever? The fear in their eyes mirrored his own dread as he led them toward the hallway, one question reverberating through his mind: what waited beyond that door? Richard stepped into the dim corridor, his heart pounding like a war drum. With each step, the wooden floor creaked beneath him, a reminder of the age-old house's hidden wisdom. The flickering light from the chandelier above painted eerie shadows on the walls, dancing like spirits preparing to reveal their long-kept secrets. Emily and Sarah followed close behind, anxiety hanging between them like a suffocating fog. "Show me where it is," Richard urged, gripping the doorknob tightly. His palms were slick with sweat, a nervous energy coursing through him. What horror lay behind the facade of their perfect life? He thought he knew everything about his daughters, but this was uncharted territory. They led him deeper into the mansion, past the sprawling halls adorned with family portraits that felt like watching eyes. The air thickened, heavy with a sense of impending revelation. The secret they whispered about, a hidden room that had been sealed away, beckoned him closer, a siren song laced with dread. Finally, they reached the wall that Sarah pointed to. A faint outline barely visible where the wall met the floor caught Richard's attention. He swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the sweat collecting at the nape of his neck. "Right here," Emily whispered, her voice a ghost. She looked at her sister, a flicker of courage sparking between them, despite the fear etched on their faces. Richard hesitated, drawing in a shaky breath. "Are you sure about this? We don't know what we're dealing with." He felt reluctant to plunge into the unknown, yet the curiosity clawed at him relentlessly. Sarah nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "We have to. If we don't, it might hurt someone else." The weight of her words surged through him, an electrical jolt that encouraged a determination he didn't know he possessed. With one swift motion, he pushed against the wall, testing its strength. As the surface gave way, revealing a barely visible crack, an undeniable rush of cold air poured out, invading their space like 1,000 whispers restless for release. The door creaked open, darkness leaking from within like a living thing. Fear gripped them all, but Richard pressed on, illuminating the room with his cell phone's flashlight. What he found inside left him breathless. That it wasn't just a room, it was a chamber of horrors. Dark stains splattered across the walls told a story of anguish, each marred patch a reminder of pain. Old furniture lay discarded, covered in layers of dust, a forgotten grave for long-buried secrets. But what caught his eye were the strange symbols etched into the floor, glowing faintly in the dim light, pulsating like a heartbeat. What is this?" Richard murmured as he stepped further into the unsettling room, instinct screaming at him to retreat while drawing him closer like a moth to a flame. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "We think someone might have been doing rituals here. We heard voices, Dad. Terrible things." Her confession hung in the air, palpable and thick. The shadows around them seemed to pulse, eager to absorb more fear. Richard's spine tingled, his heart caught in an icy vice. Memories of the mansion's past lingered just out of reach, whispering of spine-chilling events that had been swept under the rug of family affluence. Just as they stood frozen in shock, the house groaned again. A low rumble reverberated through the walls, sending tremors through Richard's bones. Something was stirring, awakening beneath the weight of the past. "Dad," Sarah's whisper broke through his reverie, "do you think it's too late to turn back?" The darkness deepened, and Richard felt a surge of dread flooding his veins. What had his daughters unearthed? What force had they disturbed? With a heavy heart, he braced himself for the truth that was about to be unveiled, knowing full well all their lives might depend on it. As the rumbles intensified, another sound, a faint echo, broke through. A whisper, chilling and compelling, wrapped around them like a shadow. "Help us," it beckoned, pulling at their very souls. Richard looked wide-eyed at his daughters, knowing that whatever awaited them demanded a decision. They could run or face their fate head-on. They had come this far, and now, it was time to uncover the real truth, but could they withstand what was coming? The question loomed larger than the darkness itself. Richard's heart thudded louder than the ongoing rumble of the house. A mix of anger and fear coursed through him, battling against the instinct to flee. The whisper echoed again, softer this time, more desperate. "Help us!" It was like a call from the depths of the abyss, reaching out to grip his very soul. "Girls, we need to get out of here," he urged, voice strained. But deep down, a part of him knew running away wouldn't solve anything. "No." Sarah peered deeper into the dark room, her eyes wide with a blend of terror and determination. "We can't leave it like this, Dad. What if someone or something is trapped in here?" Emily nodded slowly. What if it's connected to us somehow? To our family? We need to know." A profound silence followed her words, punctuated only by the frantic thumping in Richard's chest. The symbols on the floor glowed brighter as if responding to their resolve, casting an otherworldly light that distorted the room. Richard felt a shiver slide down his spine, yet that same electric jolt surged through him again. Curiosity mingled with dread, drawing him closer. As they stepped deeper into the chamber, twilight shadows morphed into shapes that seemed to whisper secrets long forgotten. The air thickened, heavy with an inexplicable energy. Richard's flashlight flickered, momentarily plunging them into dark uncertainty. His breath hitched. "Can we trust what we're feeling?" Suddenly, the whispers transformed into sibilant voices, overlapping one another, each word laced with sorrow. "Help us!" It was a cacophony of pleas, some soft, some urgent. He gripped his daughter's shoulders, feeling the tremors of fear just beneath their skin. "Stay close. Dad," Emily whispered, her eyes now shimmering with tears. "What if this is where it all began? The stories Grandma used to tell about our ancestors, the rituals, the sacrifices, what if they're real?" Richard's throat tightened. Memories of long-forgotten family tales flared in his mind, shadows of their lineage tied to this oppressive mansion. "No, this can't be true," he whispered, trying to shake the chilling thoughts away, but the shadows around him stirred, crawling across the walls like hungry ghosts. The symbols pulsed, glowing with a warm yet unsettling light, almost beckoning them. As if possessing a life of their own, they undulated in rhythm with the whispers, forming a heartbeat that synced with Richard's own. "What do you want from us?" he shouted into the darkness, anger overcoming fear. The sound reverberated, echoing like a lost cry. In an instant, the room fell dead silent. He felt the temperature drop sharply. A shadow sprang forth in front of him, swirling and morphing into a figure translucent yet defined, full of pain that echoed from centuries past. Its eyes held a sorrowful depth, reaching out through time and space. Suddenly, Richard's phone flickered back to life, casting light on the figure female, with hollow cheeks and a haunting gaze. She looked right at him as though seen for the first time. "Free us," she rasped, and in that moment, Richard recoiled, a chilling realization boiling within him. The truth might be more horrifying than he feared. "Is this why you brought us here?" he stammered, light shaking in his hands. "Are you trapped because of us?" The figure raised her hand, pointing directly at the symbols on the floor. "The sacrifice, the bond, what sacrifice?" Richard's mind raced. And suddenly, it all clicked: the family's history, the unexplained tragedies, the whispers of the mansion. They were deeper in than they ever imagined, standing on the precipice of something catastrophic. "Dad, we have to help her. We can't leave her here," Sarah cried, her voice trembling with desperation. His heart sank. What if helping meant they had to sacrifice something themselves? Dread weighed heavy on him as fear clawed at his throat. The figure wailed, the sound piercing through the ominous chamber like shattering glass. "Help us," she called one last time, the pain in her voice pushing against him like a tidal wave. Richard felt a pit forming in his stomach, realizing the stakes were higher than he ever imagined. This wasn't just about uncovering their family's secret. It was about making a choice. A choice that could change everything, perhaps even cost them their lives. Could they afford to confront the past? Would they become whatever had once haunted this cursed room? As Richard took a deep breath, the thick air around him twisted into a whirlwind of emotions, and then, just when they thought they were ready to grasp control, the house let out a thunderous roar, shaking their resolve like never before. As the walls trembled, Richard wondered, had they unleashed something far beyond their understanding? What awaited them when the past and present collided? Was their fate sealed, or had they just begun to write a new chapter of terror yet untold? Eyes wide with terror, Richard instinctively pulled his daughters closer. The house seemed alive, a rattling beast that breathed and groaned under the weight of their fears. The shadows twisted and swirled like smoke, obscuring the world from their reality. Every creak of the floorboards and whisper of the wind conjured visions far more sinister than he could process. "Stay together," he barked, though doubts gnawed incessantly at his insides. What was the sacrifice? What bond did the figure speak of? Questions piled atop one another, a mountain of dread that loomed over him, suffocating. Suddenly, the air shifted. A chill coursed through the room, swirling around them like an impending storm. The glowing symbols pulsated violently, casting a rhythm of pulsing hues across the walls. Richard grasped the girl's hands tightly as a fresh wave of whispers crashed over them. "Free us. Bring us peace." Each plea piled onto the last, turning into a relentless cacophony. Richard's heart raced as he felt a pull. Something deep within him craved to respond to those voices. What if this was a chance to set something right? Dad. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. We have to do something. We can't just stand here. Tears streamed down Emily's face. She looked braver than he felt. Their anguish echoed like an electric charge in the air, sparking something profound within him. What do you want? He shouted back, a desperate demand mingled with fear. The response was instantaneous. The figure flickered, her face twisting in anguish, impossibly real yet burdened with history. She stepped forward, her thin, wispy form shimmering like a mirage. Your blood, your bond. She gasped, struggle etched across her ghostly features. The wall, the secret, you must unlock it. A weight settled on Richard's chest. The implications were staggering. Bloodlines? Secret walls? The mansion was a tomb for unspeakable truths, guarding secrets of his ancestors, a legacy wrapped tightly in the shroud of despair. Unlock what? Richard whispered, his voice cracking. What are you asking of us? The question hung in the air as the figure pointed at the symbols again, a desperate urgency in her hollow eyes. Your lives, packed the key. Sarah squeezed Richard's hand. We're in this together, Dad. We can't leave her trapped. But what would they have to give? A part of him screamed to flee while he still could. What horrors awaited them? What price would they have to pay? The mansion groaned louder, as if responding to his uncertainty, each sound resonating like a visceral warning. Look! The floor! Emily shouted, her voice laced with panic. The symbols glowed brighter, swirling into a brilliant display. Richard squinted, his breath caught in his throat. He could see shapes shift within the light, figures that seemed to wriggle in pain, seeking liberation. Suddenly, darkness loomed heavier, casting an unnerving quiet over the chamber. In the oppressive hush, Richard's phone buzzed again, messages flying in like harbingers of doom. His heart raced as he saw one notification after another, each revealing something about his family's history, cursed ancestors, a lineage marked by tragedy and sacrifice. No, no, no. He muttered, backing away, the walls closing in. Just then, the figure let out a piercing shriek, a sound that vibrated down to his bones. Do it. Do it now. The urge to protect his girls clawed at him, yet the horror of what doing it meant loomed larger than life. The shadows crept closer, whispering dark secrets in a language lost to time. Dad! Sarah cried, her voice trembling more than ever. His mind raced. Would he juggle risking everything for ghosts? Would they pay a price too high to bear? In a moment of brutal clarity, Richard knew one thing: this was the crossroads. They could walk away, forsake all ties to the past, or step into a darkness that could very well consume them. Move! He shouted, adrenaline surging as he grabbed both of his daughters and pushed toward the pulsating symbols. But as they stepped closer, a violent roar echoed through the mansion's corridors. The ground beneath them creaked ominously, life intertwining with death as they stood on the brink of the abyss. What awaited them in the darker recesses of their lineage? Was he too late to change the tide of fate, and was the price of revealing the truth perhaps far worse than they ever imagined? As shadows curled around them, Richard felt time slip away. In the grasp of chilling darkness, a single, piercing question remained: what if the secrets of their past didn't want to be uncovered? The room trembled, vibrating with a pulsing resonance that seemed to echo the mounting chaos in Richard's heart. With each step closer to the symbols, an invisible force pressed against them, urging them back, warning them away from what lay ahead. The air was thick, a mix of dread and desperation swirling together in a suffocating embrace. Dad, we can't back down. Sarah cried, her voice piercing through the claustrophobic swirl of whispers. The urgency in her tone sent sharp spikes of fear into Richard's chest. Every fiber of his being screamed to turn and run, yet the agony etched across the figure's face held him captive. Unlock the truth. Save us. The voice was a siren song, sirening through the ancestral hall, weaving into Richard's very core. But what truth? What blood pact was he about to embark on with his children as collateral? Each thumping heartbeat echoed like a death knell, reminding him of the stakes at play. "Focus, Richard," he muttered to himself, forcing clarity through the rising tide of panic. The symbols glowed brighter, illuminating hidden corners of the room filled with dread. The shadows behind him twisted and writhed like a restless beast, hungry for their fears. He jerked his head toward the fireplace, a shadowed alcove obscured by thick cobwebs and layers of time. Could it be hiding something? Slowly, he edged forward, fingers brushing against the ancient plaster walls. The chilling sensation sent a shudder down his spine. "Wait. Don't." Emily's plea hung, but Richard was already lost in the power enveloping him. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and the symbols surged once again, casting distorted shapes across his trembling hand. In a flash, the past seized him. Images of long-gone relatives flickered through his mind, despairing faces, loss bound together by blood and tragedy. Their cries echoed within his mind, multiplying the weight he carried. What chains had he inherited? This house, it wants to be freed. A voice, raw and cracked, slipped from Richard's lips as the truth unfolded with a horrifying clarity. He turned back to Sarah and Emily, their faces pale and stricken with fear, yet a flicker of determination shone in their eyes. Together, Richard whispered, though the word felt inadequate against the encroaching darkness. "We're in this together." But as he spoke, the energy shifted. The room convulsed, the chilling winds howled louder, and Richard's heart raced against the rapid beat of a ticking clock. He had no time for second thoughts. They were already entangled in this nightmare. "Embrace it," the figure commanded, her hollow eyes piercing into Richard's soul. "Your love, a bond forged with sacrifice, is the key. What if our love costs too much?" He countered, every ounce of courage falling away under the weight of doubt. He felt the tears stinging his eyes, hot against the cold terror inching its way closer, pulling at their very essence. What would happen if they played the game the house demanded? Without warning, the murmurs fused into a singular, chilling chant, compelling him to move, to act, to dare. Unlock for freedom or madness. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the symbols. Richard staggered backward, dragging his daughters with him. But they were not retreating, they were moving closer to the heart of this secret. "Now!" Sarah shouted, her cry igniting something. They surged forward, propelled by fear and the desperate need to save the figure trapped in darkness. With a shuddering breath, Richard grasped the warmth of the symbols, feeling their power connect with his very soul. "I will unlock you," he screamed, knowing full well that such a promise could unleash horrors beyond comprehension. The walls trembled. A surge of energy exploded from their hands, and suddenly, the room filled with howls of despair intertwining with laughter, an intoxicating sound that jolted Richard's senses. What had they released? In that split second, clarity shattered his choices as he spun around, facing the deepening shadows. The figure laughed, a sound dark yet luminous, filling the aching void. "With curiosities beyond their reckoning. Now the truth spills forth, my dear, but truth comes at a cost." Shadows whirled and danced, threatening to consume them in the coming storm. As Richard clutched his daughters, he felt a terrible realization seep in. They had crossed a threshold. The questions remained unvoiced but heavy upon him. What kind of truth would be unleashed? Could they survive the legacy of the past, or would the echoes of their ancestors herald their doom? The house roared, darkness seeping deeper until it felt like the very air teetered on the brink of a revelation. And just when Richard thought nothing could surprise him more, the laughter morphed into whispers that felt like ice against his skin, leaving them asking, were they the rescuers or the next victims of a haunting legacy? A weight pressed down on Richard, one that was far more than just physical. It wrapped around his heart, squeezing until his breath struggled to escape. The laughter, once a chilling sound, was now intermingling with whispers that swirled around him like a thick fog, seeping into his very bones. The shadows surged, twisting and morphing, revealing glimpses of nightmarish figures that seemed to beckon him closer. "Dad, what is happening?" Emily's voice broke through the haze, trembling with fear. Richard looked at her, his heart clenching as he saw the terror reflected in her wide eyes. He wouldn't he let this house swallow them whole? I don't know. He shouted, desperation permeating his voice. But we can't let it take us. We need to find a way to put a stop to this. The figure in the center of the room watched them intently, her hollow eyes gleaming with dark satisfaction. You think you can escape what you have unleashed? She taunted, a grin stretching across her lips. The truth demands payment and you've already begun to pay. A piercing chill snaked down Richard's spine. He staggered back, and the symbols glowed with an intensity that mirrored the storm of dread inside him. They were trapped. And what they released might very well demand their very souls in return. Suddenly, the ground shuddered, vibrating violently beneath their feet. Sarah clutched her sister's arm, her voice quaking, we need to hold on to each other. Yes. Richard nodded emphatically. Together, we can face this whatever this is. They formed a tight circle, hands clasped, hearts pounding in unison. Memories surged of laughter in the park, of family dinners, of all they had endured together. Could those bonds, those precious moments be strong enough to fight whatever malevolence loomed in this cursed space? The room darkened, the shadows stretching and clawing at the edges of their resolve. You think memories can save you? The figure laughed, her voice a haunting melody woven with malice. The past is a heavy burden to bear. Are you ready to uncover the truth, knowing it may shatter you? Richard's throat tightened. He had no answers. But his love for Sarah and Emily burned fiercely, a flicker of hope against the overwhelming despair. Show us. He shouted, the command tearing from his lips. Show us what you want us to see. In an instant, the air crackled, and the shadows exploded into vibrant images. Scenes from long ago unfolded around them: anguish, betrayal, and bloody vengeance. Faces they'd never seen twisted in agony, the very walls of the house echoing with the cries of their ancestors. Richard's head spun as he recognized them. They were more than just figures, these were remnants of his lineage, held captive within the confines of this wretched place. What are you doing? Sarah demanded, pulling away slightly, her eyes wide with horror. We didn't ask for this. But the figure was undeterred, her voice now a thunderous roar. You are bound by blood. Your family's sins have tainted you. Will you confront them, or will you let them consume you? Richard was on his knees now, dread flooding his senses. They had uncovered something far deeper, an ancestral secret that could tear them apart. Would he sacrifice his daughters for a past he never knew? Or would they turn their backs and flee, leaving the shadows to reign in darkness? The images swirled fiercely, and Richard felt the room close in, the walls pulsating with the weight of their family history. It was suffocating, oppressive, yet somehow familiar. Richard, look! Emily cried, pointing frantically at a glimmer of light emerging at the center of the chaos. It flickered with an inviting warmth, urging them forward even as shadows clawed around it. Their hearts raced, adrenaline pushing them to fight, to understand. Could it be a way out? Sarah murmured, hope battling fear. I don't know. He yelled back, determination solidifying in his chest. But we won't find out standing still. With that, they surged toward the light, hearts pounding as the dark surroundings groaned in protest, the figures. Laughter echoing ominously in their ears. Corners of despair danced in his mind. What truth awaited them? Would it bring freedom or bind them tighter to the darkness of their family's legacy? The light beckoned, gleaming brighter as they approached. It was now or never. But as they reached for it, a deafening shriek split the air, a sound so profoundly sorrowful it almost shattered his resolve. As the echoes of their ancestors roared around them, Richard realized they were not just confronting the past, they were risking everything for a hope that might explode into chaos, and they had no idea what awaited them in that blinding light. Would they find love on the other side, or would it shatter their already fragile bonds? Only the truth could tell. Richard lunged toward the light, every muscle in his body straining against the chaos that surrounded them. The roar of past horrors clashed against the sound of their frightened breaths. As they drew closer, the light transformed into a swirling vortex, pulsating like a heartbeat. The promise of salvation or doom hung in the air. "Stay close," he shouted, tightening his grip on Emily's and Sarah's hands. The shadows writhed around them, reaching out as if to drag them back into the abyss. Richard could feel the dread emanating from his daughters. "It's calling us," Sarah screamed over the cacophony, her eyes wide with terror. "I can't hold on much longer." Emily struggled, her voice shaky and strained. The laughter of the figure grew deafening, drowning out their voices, taunting them. "You think you can embrace the light without understanding the darkness that birthed it? Face the price of your ancestors' sins." Before Richard could respond, the shrill wail reached its peak, sending a thundering pulse through the room. The light flickered ominously, as if it were about to extinguish. The floor trembled violently. Was it the house or his own fears shaking the very foundation of their reality? "Push through," he bellowed, channeling every ounce of hope he could muster. He could already feel the grip of the shadows weakening, almost as if they feared the light more than they feared the truth. But the moment they reached the brink of the light, everything froze. The atmosphere shifted as if time had been momentarily halted. Richard found himself staring into the blinding white, a moment of clarity slicing through the fog of chaos. It wasn't just a light. They were standing at the threshold of a memory, a reflection of choices made long before they were born. "Dad!" Emily cried, her voice piercing through the silence. "What are we losing here?" He looked at his daughters, their faces tempered with fear and strength. It hit him then. The truth wasn't just about their ancestors. It was about them, the family they were building, the bonds they had forged through love and sacrifice. "No!" he yelled, the clarity sharpening into resolve. "We won't lose each other, and we won't let the past dictate our future." With that, he surged through the light, pulling Emily and Sarah along with him. As they crossed the threshold, a wave of warmth enveloped them, and for a moment, they floated in a sea of pure solace. Everything outside dulled to a whisper. Visions of their lineage flooded his mind, laughter intertwined with pain, joy mixed with sorrow. He followed the echoes, desperate for answers as familiar faces appeared, strangers and kin, intertwined, crying out for release. But there, shining like gold, were happy memories, igniting a fierce longing inside him. But suddenly, the warmth pulsed with an intensity that clutched at his chest, dragging them back toward the shadows. Richard felt the presence of something ancient and malevolent pulling at them, a willpower that transcended time itself. "Confront me." The voice of the figure penetrated the tranquility, threatening to shatter it to pieces. "Dare to meet me in my domain, or be trapped forever in this endless cycle of despair." Richard gasped, the realization crashing down on him like a tidal wave. They weren't merely fighting for their present. They were up against a cycle of pain rooted in their bloodlines. Would they break free or be forever bound to the sins that sought to consume them? Emily's hand trembled in his grip, but she spoke, fierce and clear, "We are stronger than our past." "Yes," Sarah echoed, newfound courage igniting in her eyes. "Together, we can break the cycle." As they uttered those words, the light exploded around them, overwhelming and blinding. Richard felt himself being torn apart, their bond the only thing keeping him anchored to this moment. Just as the figure's furious laughter rose to a crescendo, the last remnants of darkness peeled back, revealing a doorway beyond the light, a portal. Would they step through it, or would their strength falter before the truth could lead them to freedom? As they hesitated, the darkness began its advance again, threatening to reclaim them. The moment loomed, heavy with uncertainty. Would their hearts hold, or would they succumb to the past? With a breath drawn from the depths of love and hope, Richard shouted into the chaos, "Together." But with that declaration, an unknown force surged from the doorway, and it enveloped them, the anguished wails of their ancestors echoing, ushering them toward the threshold of realization, where one decision could spell the fate of their family legacy. What truths would emerge on the other side, and at what cost? As the surge of energy engulfed them, Richard felt the tug of time twisting, pulling them closer to the portal. It seemed alive, pulsating with stories long buried. A flash of images flashed through his mind, long forgotten family tragedies that whispered of greed, betrayal, and anguish. He struggled against the tide, holding tighter to his daughters, fear boiling within him as shadows clawed at their heels. "Keep fighting," he urged, feeling the darkness biting at their ankles, trying to snatch them back into despair. Emily and Sarah nodded, eyes narrowed with determination, but their youthful faces began to grow pale as the shadows intertwined with their essence. The wails of their ancestors soared around them, an orchestra of pain and pleading that threatened to drown out their resolve. "You cannot escape us," the figure shouted, its voice dripping with malice. Each word echoed like a hammer, driving nails of doubt into Richard's heart. "You cannot erase the past, the sins will always remain." But there, in the heart of his fury, a flicker of light ignited within him. "No!" he roared, channeling everything he had into a shield against the approaching darkness. "We are not defined by their pain. We can break the cycle." With one last desperate lunge, they crossed into the portal, tumbling through a kaleidoscope of colors as reality twisted around them. It felt like falling through time, where moments of despair merged with sweet memories. Voices laughed, and tears fell, a shared legacy illuminating their path. Then, the world solidified. They landed on a cold, hard floor, gasping for air. Richard blinked and surveyed their surroundings, an imposing hall, lined with ancestral portraits, heavy with dust and sorrow. The air was thick, a stifling reminder of the weight of history. He turned to Emily and Sarah, both shaken but unharmed. Relief flooded over him, but there was no time to celebrate. The figure stood before them, cloaked in shadows, its eyes glinting with intrigue. "Welcome," it said, smooth as silk but laced with poison. "You've crossed the threshold now, face what truly lies ahead." Richard's heart sank. They were no longer just fighting for their lives, they were standing at the precipice of their family's dark legacy. Memories darted from the walls, their actions had shaped the present. The figure smirked, its mouth twisting into a knowing grin. "Every ancestor you seek to protect embodies a choice, a mistake. Are you ready to confront them?" The ancestral visions conjured dim memories of greed and entangled betrayals. Richard's breath hitched as he recognized their faces. "What have you done?" he accused. "You've twisted our lives." The figure tilted its head, studying him, amusement flickering in its gaze. "And did your family not serve the darkness willingly? To hold power, to gain wealth, there's a price, you know. Would you bend your will to the truth, or refute what's real?" Richard shifted uneasily, the walls seemingly closing in. Around him, images flickered and morphed into the struggles and joys of those who lived before, fighting to hold tightly onto what mattered. "Hold on to your love," Emily shouted, breaking through Richard's thoughts. "No more running. Let us uncover the truth together." Around them, the darkness wavered, the figure's laugh faltering, almost surprised by their tenacity. Then, as if testing them, the shadows thickened, 1,000 whispers clamoring, drowning out reason. "Fine," the figure said ominously, "let us strip away the illusion. We will see what remains of your fragile family bonds." With that, the space around them began to twist violently, the walls shaking as memories cracked and splintered. Richard clutched his daughters, a sense of foreboding growing. What horrors would they unearth? Fearing what lay ahead, Richard steeled himself. "No matter what the truth is," he declared, heart racing, "we face it together." But just as the darkness arched and surged, there was a deafening silence, the calm before a storm of revelations, a moment where the past would clash violently with the present. In that stillness, they braced for the unraveling, for what wicked truths their ancestors had left behind. Could they emerge intact, or would they find themselves ensnared in a trap far worse than they could imagine? The moment stretched, an eternity hanging in the air, thick with tension. Richard's heart pounded, an echoing drum in the haunting silence. He could sense the shadows shifting, swaying in anticipation as if they fed on the dread creeping through his veins. It was a twisted dance of the past, and it was about to begin. Then, everything collapsed, the walls of the hall warped and peeled back like dying leaves in autumn, revealing chasms filled with blackness. Visions surged forth, each fragment splintering into reality. Richard caught glimpses of faces twisted in anguish, ancestors who had crossed paths drenched in betrayal, greed, and longing. They loomed, silent yet screaming, begging for liberation or vengeance. "Help us!" a distant voice cried, filled with sorrow. "Don't listen!" another warned, urgency lining their tone. Richard and his daughters stood rooted, a tapestry of emotions tightened around their throats. The figure before them shimmered, growing more defined amid the chaos. "What a pity," it taunted, savoring every note of their distress. "You thought you could escape? Your family's sins run deeper than you realize. Let's unearth them, shall we?" With a sweeping gesture, the darkness thickened, wrapping around them like a vice. Richard felt a heavy weight on his chest. It was not just the pressure of the dark, it felt like history demanding to be acknowledged. Emily blinked at the shifting images, horror morphing her innocent features. "What will we see?" She trembled, eyes wide, locked on her father's. "Things we never wanted to know," Richard replied, wrestling with the dread swirling inside him. "But we can't turn away from this." Suddenly, a memory erupted beside them, vivid as a vivid flame. Richard recoiled as he watched his great-grandfather, eyes wild with greed, a deal gone wrong playing out before him. "You think power is worth the sacrifice?" the figure shouted, furious. "We made our deals, they cost us dearly." "No," Richard breathed, the layers of guilt and shame peeling back. Sarah gasped, clinging to her sister's arm. The images morphed again, showing Richard's grandmother, tears streaming down her face, begging for forgiveness. "It wasn't my choice. I wanted to protect you," she pleaded to the walls, but no one was there to listen. Richard felt his heart wrench. "This is our legacy?" he whispered, sickened. The shadows danced about them, absorbing every ounce of pain, each family's secret grinding into one horrific mosaic. They began to intertwine with their ancestors, faces merging with the shadows around. But then, amidst the darkness, a flicker of defiance sprang from Emily. "No! This isn't who we are!" she shouted, stepping forward against the storm of memories. With a fierce spark in her eyes, she reached out, as though she could touch the essence of their family history, pulling it closer instead of yielding. "Together!" Sarah echoed, stepping up beside her sister, a fierce flame of courage ignited. Richard's heart swelled, watching their unity fight the shadows. They could shatter this cycle, but how? The figure hissed, its form flickering angrily. "Do you really think your love can conquer the darkness? I'll show you the cost of your naivety." Suddenly, the shadows surged, racing toward them with dizzying speed. Richard felt the walls of the past close in, his daughters at his side, hearts pounding as they prepared for an incoming storm. They combined their strength, hearts yellow with hope, bracing against the unknown that was about to reveal itself. What truths lay hidden, ready to erupt in a fiery confessional? Would they be able to navigate the treacherous twists of their lineage without breaking apart? As the shadows collided against their last line of defense, the air crackled with tension. They were on the verge of unmasking everything that haunted their bloodline, but at what price? Richard clenched his jaw. It was time to find out. The room erupted in chaos. Shadows collided, twisting and writhing in a frenzied dance, their desperate cries merging into a cacophony of despair. Richard could feel the weight of history pressing against his chest like a heavy stone, threatening to smother him and his daughters. Each scream echoed the pain of their ancestors, a broken chorus pleading for release. "We can't give in," Richard shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. His daughters locked eyes with him, courage and fear intertwined in their expressions. They were more than just a lineage, they were a family bound by love, desperate to defy the dark legacy threatening to engulf them. Together, they stepped forward. Richard held his daughter's hands tightly, feeling the warmth of their resolve feed his own. "This isn't who we are," Emily cried, her voice fierce against the surrounding shadows. "We can break this cycle. We can choose our fate." Suddenly, a surge of light erupted from their clasped hands, illuminating the oppressive darkness that loomed around them. The shadows hissed and recoiled, momentarily stunned by the brightness. Richard felt an electrifying connection with his daughters, a powerful force that drove back the darkness like morning chasing away the night. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice rising above the chaos. "We have to confront the truth so we can heal." With each word, the pulsing energy strengthened. The ancestral figures that swirled within the darkness began to shift in response, their expressions changing from despair to something resembling hope. Richard could see in their ghostly faces that they understood the choice he and his daughters were making, a refusal to be bound by the sins of the past, a commitment to reclaim their narrative. "Let us help you." A voice broke through the clamor, familiar yet distant. Richard gasped as a warm light enveloped them, pulling memories and ancestral energies together into a vibrant tapestry. Faces materialized: his grandparents, great-grandparents. They were united in purpose now, standing in solidarity with Richard and the girls against the darkness that had haunted their lineage for centuries. "What must we do?" Richard shouted, his heart racing with fervor. "Forgive," the collective voices echoed, a blend of yearning and clarity flowing through the air. "Forgive us our mistakes and learn from them. Our sins need not bind you, they can guide you to change." Richard felt tears prick his eyes. To free his ancestors, he didn't only need to confront the pain but also to offer forgiveness, an act of compassion that could break the chains that had held his family captive for too long. "I forgive you," he cried out, voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. "I forgive your mistakes. Together, we free ourselves from this legacy of suffering." At this declaration, a warm glow enveloped them, and the ancestral figures smiled, their faces relieving centuries of sorrow. The shadows writhed, shrieking in fury, thrashing against the wall of light created by Richard and his daughter's collective will. "Keep it up," Emily yelled, her fingers interlocked with her father and sister's. "We're stronger than this." The brightness expanded, glowing fiercely as more memories swirled into a kaleidoscope of color. Richard recalled family gatherings filled with love, laughter, and unity, their history fused with joy, not solely tragedy. It was a reminder that life was complex, woven with both light and shadow. With a loud crack, the shadows began to dissipate, sent reeling by the strength of their combined light. The room shuddered violently, and Richard feared the darkness might retaliate. "Stay close," he urged, feeling the heat of their shared bond ignite. "I'm not afraid," Sarah added fiercely. "We're here together." As her words echoed, the ethereal light pulsated more brightly, filling every corner of the oppressive chamber. The entwined essence of their love began to break apart the very fabric of the darkness, unraveling the centuries of pain that sought to bind them. With one final surge of unity, Richard, Emily, and Sarah shouted, "We choose love. We choose hope." And in an instant, a radiant beam shot forth, exploding outward and shattering the ceiling of shadows. The darkness screamed as it splintered into tiny fragments, the mournful echoes fading until they disappeared completely. Silence reigned in the hollow aftermath, a profound stillness that felt airier, lighter. Richard, breathless, lowered his hand to look around. The room, no longer a den of despair, had transformed into something beautiful, vibrant, a shrine to their family story, now laced with healing and love. "Did we do it?" Emily whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "I think we did, sweetheart," Richard said, overcome with emotion. "We faced the darkness together and, in doing so, we forged a new path." Sarah squeezed her father's hand, the weight of their shared struggle now melting into relief. "We broke the cycle." They stood together, side by side, hearts united, their burdens lightened. The past was part of them, a piece of their fabric, but it no longer dictated their fate. Richard gazed down the now empty hallway, bright with sunlight streaming through the windows. The mansion was alive again, a sacred space that could breathe and grow with them, instead of stifled by its past. "This is where our real story begins," he finally said, his voice steady. Emily and Sarah nodded, expressions aflame with newfound hope, ready to embrace whatever awaited them beyond the shadows of their family history. The promise of the future was vibrant and warm, reflected in the sparkle of their eyes. As they took their first steps toward freedom, Richard couldn't help but feel lighter, as if the chains of the past had truly shattered. With his daughters by his side, the darkness behind them became nothing more than a whisper, a remembrance of where they'd come from but not where they were going, and in that moment, he knew they were not merely survivors, they were victors, ready to face the world beyond, hand in hand, with hearts unshackled and spirits unbroken. Now, just a moment before this remarkable journey comes to an end, there's something you absolutely must do. You need to subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss our next mind-blowing story. Smash that like button now, it helps us reach more awesome people like you, and flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about the epic conclusion you just witnessed. We want to hear your reactions. Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. The adventure continues, and you don't want to miss what's coming.